I've just opened the foreach loop start.xlsm file. Let's go and check the Visual Basic Editor. In the code module, I have a subroutine called foreach loop sub. In this subroutine, we will iterate over a one-dimensional array. However, this time it will not be necessary to get the lower bound and the upper bound of the array. We will use the foreach loop to iterate over the array, and in the foreach loop we are not increasing and decreasing indexes. Iteration works differently in the foreach loop. I've declared a string array employees on the first line of my code. This is a dynamic array because I didn't set the size of it while I was declaring the array. But in the next line I'm setting the size of the array, so the last index of the array will be 4. So altogether we can save 5 employees into this array from indexes 0 to 4. The interesting part starts at line 3. I declare a variable called item, and this is a variant variable. So this variable will be able to hold any kind of data, string, number, doesn't matter. I add some employees or names to the employees array, and then we are iterating over the employees. What we are doing in the first line is that we use the foreach statement, and then we have to specify basically our looping variable, and this item variable will be the looping variable. There comes the in keyword, and there comes what we want to iterate over, so we want to iterate over the employees array. At each iteration we will print out the item, so the value that the item variable holds. At each iteration, of course, the item variable will hold an employee. First it will be Emma, then Paul, then Jane, then Joe, then Emily. You can think about the item variable as a container variable or as a temporary variable, which at each iteration holds a different value. By the way, you can name this item variable anything, so it doesn't have to be item. But I like to use the word item for a variable like this because it's kind of general, kind of neutral. An item can be anything, an employee name, but it can also be an employee ID or some kind of numeric data. But this is just my preference. Let's check the syntax for the foreach loop again. So we have the foreach statement, then the looping variable or the container variable, then comes the in keyword, and then comes the variable which we want to iterate over. This time the variable is of course an array, so the employees array is specified here. We still need the next statement, and of course when we hit the next statement, then the next item will be iterated over. Let's press F5 to see that the loop is indeed working. And indeed it is working correctly. First the item variable will be Emma, and it will be printed out, then Paul, then Jane, then the item will become Joe, and then lastly Emily. If you don't have to do anything with the indexes, then the foreach loop can be very useful. The advantage that it is easier to write a foreach loop than a for loop. We just need a looping variable. So in a case of an array, we don't need to get the lower bounds and the upper bounds to iterate over it. Of course, the foreach loop has disadvantages as well. We cannot reverse a foreach loop as we did with a for loop. So in a foreach loop, we have to iterate over from the beginning until the end. And if we want to know at what index a value is saved, then we cannot use the foreach loop because we are not using indexes to iterate over the array. It cannot be an array, so it can be a different data structure, but so far we've been working with arrays. As usual with everything in programming, the foreach loop then has advantages and disadvantages. But I think now you're getting the idea that depending on the situation, we can use different type of for loops to simplify our code or make our code more straightforward.